Well, are we going?
We're going.
Oh, welcome at the ECBA webinar. This time we'll be looking at mapping the unseen, how bathymetry reveals Arctic change by Deniz Vural. I'm looking very forward to this webinar because to me it's a totally new experience. We're doing this on behalf of the ECBA and the Synopsis program, which is about sustainability at schools. And I'm really pleased to see you all here. So now you hit the button, Simon. There we go. So here's what the European Countries Biologists Association is about. It's an association of associations, which means that several European biology associations are member of the ECBA, and the ECBA sort of works as an overarching organization which allows societies to exchange information. So what's the ECBA do? And Simon has to hit the button again. Yes.
Sorry,
so
there's always this 2-second delay in here.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Yes. So what I think the main point is for biologists in Europe is that I always say we have had this opportunity to drink from this source of wisdom, which is called biology, but it also gives us the obligation to act on it. And I think we have all this knowledge, we know what's going on, and I think it's very important that we feel proud to be a biologist. Because if you're proud, you speak up, and we need to speak up because I think our world desires and needs biologists to speak up. So that's why I say speak up, be proud to be a biologist, and make this difference. And this is why. There's no planet B, and actually we are now proud but not happy to be a biologist because especially these days, we see so many things going not exactly in the right direction. So I think our voices is really needed.
All right, thanks, Harm. And sorry for the delay, but this makes it all human in here. So I'm going to quickly introduce the Synopsis project to all of you who don't know it. So we are setting up a Erasmus Plus School Heads and Teacher Training Academy on teaching for sustainability citizenship. So what is this? It involves the active engagement in environmental, social, and economic sustainability effort. And sustainability citizenship further emphasizes participation and advocacy and informed decision-making rather than passive support. And we try to help with this webinar series that we all come a bit closer to this. Because a sustainability citizen recognizes the interconnectedness of global systems and takes responsibility for contributing to positive change. And to all these words, we have a few faces here from our project. So we are a team of 10 different organizations from 7 European countries. They're all marked in this map over here. And if you are a teacher, it would greatly benefit our project if you would quickly fill out the survey. Please scan the QR code. It's just 5 questions, and this would really be of help. I hope you all have scanned it. Otherwise, I will put the link in the chat in a moment. And with this, I'm also happy to welcome Deniz. I have a few things prepared. Deniz is from Turkey. She did her bachelor in marine engineering at Istanbul Technical University. I hope I have this everything right. So she has 10 years of professional experience already in education and outreach activities related to climate change and its impact on polar regions. She is the author of a couple of books and publication and was and is still a conference coordinator of some important conferences around the world. After she finished her studies in Istanbul, she went to she was a researcher at the Cascade Institute in Victoria, British Columbia, for some time, and then became a doctoral researcher and a PhD candidate at the Alfred Wegener Institute for polar and marine research in Potsdam. And we are really happy to have you, Deniz, here, and we're really looking forward to your talk now. Welcome.
Thank you, Simone and Harm. I'm actually really pleased that you found all the information about myself, which is great. Without further ado, I would like to kick out the presentation. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Synapsis Academy webinar. As mentioned, my name is Deniz Vural, and I'm a PhD researcher at Alfred Wegener Institute in Potsdam, Germany. Tonight, I would like to take you on a journey beneath the waves and to explore how seafloor mapping in the Arctic is helping us understand rapid climate change and also coastal vulnerability. So this talk is called Mapping the Unseen, and I hope you will leave with a deeper appreciation for both the signs and stories that lie beneath the Arctic Ocean. But before we start, I would also like to mention that we have a bit of like everything, and maybe in the future we would have much deeper look into a specific topic, if you like me to come back again. So let's see a bit about myself. So I'm currently conducting my doctoral research in Western Canadian Arctic, specifically around the Yukon coast and Herschel Island, Qikiqtaruk. And my work brings together seafloor mapping, climate science, and indigenous knowledge. And outside the work, I'm a big fan of hiking and cycling, and especially in remote areas where land and sea feel deeply connected. And that's what really brought me here, actually, and the desire to better understand the connection, especially in a place like the Arctic that's changing so fast. So the Arctic, which is warming almost 4 times faster than the global average, as shown in the study by Rantanen and colleagues. But the scary part, why still don't fully understand what's happening under the surface. So I say, before we can protect what's changing, we first need to know what's there, and that's where bathymetry or seafloor mapping comes in. And the photos show you why this work matters. We are witnessing real-time transformations, permafrost thaw, collapsing cliffs, and sea claiming land that once supported indigenous travel routes and seasonal campsites. And Arctic coastal change isn't the abstract. It's visible, it's measurable, and it has serious consequences for communities, ecosystems, and cultural heritage. But why bathymetry matters? So bathymetry is the science of underwater topography, and it tells us how deep the seafloor is and where the underwater slopes and ridges lie, and how they shape the movement of water, sediment and ice, and so on. So why do we actually need better maps of the ocean floor? One answer is maybe curiosity, another is science, and maybe another is navigation. And here is the thing, so you can't manage what you can't measure. And whenever we are talking about navigation, climate modeling, or ecosystem protection, it all starts with knowing the shape of the seafloor. And on the left side, we see a nicely done, let's say, image of the Earth's ocean, done by Andrew Douglas, a cartographer, did this during the COVID pandemic. And we see the light blue parts where the seafloor surveying in different capacities took place. And we see Japan did a great job, but yet we know around 20% of the entire ocean. So when we talk about our oceans, actually, our knowledge is really scarce. And when we talk about Arctic, it's even worse. We don't know the 80% of the Arctic, right? I mean, there are great works done by ECBA, GEPCO, and many other hydrographic surveys. But when we talk about the high resolution, we don't really know what's hidden behind. And people often think of bathymetry as just mapping depth, but in the Arctic, it's much more. The way the seafloor is shaped controls how the ocean water moves, and large features like ridges block deep water flow. But even small dips and rises in the seabed can change how water layer mix. And that mixing moves heat and even carbon through the system. And without accurate seafloor maps, models of Arctic Ocean circulation, and even climate projections may miss the critical feedbacks. And when we talk about the unmapped territory, we said that the 80% of the Arctic coastal seafloor remains unmapped, high resolution, and that's a huge blind spot in one of the fastest changing regions of the planet. And here we are seeing our lovely Herschel Island, Qikiqtaruk. So I try to pinpoint here in a orange square. And that brings us here. Actually, this is a very historical place. Right now, I mean, it is the part of the national park, I'm sorry. But back then, this was the route, or back then, between the traffic of the whaling industry and the people coming like from Canada to Alaska. I mean, there are still people other than indigenous communities following this route, but this is the part where we see on the very Western Canadian Arctic, like border to Alaska. And in the past, yeah, Herschel Island played a big role, but now this is only for like open for seasonal observations or monitoring to welcome researchers like us. And we have our rangers from indigenous communities, mainly Aklavik region, to help us conduct our research and measurements. And when we talk about it, not only Herschel itself, but overall, we are talking about the safety, habitat monitoring, and cultural heritage. And if you end up being in Herschel Island one day, there is the white cabinet there where it explains the entire history of the island going back to a few centuries. Okay, but how do we do research part? So I put the very fancy photo here taken by Avi photographer back then, joining for us for the science communication efforts. But if we talk about what we are doing, we actually collect this data even in remote and icy regions. And I use single beam echosonder. In our case, the device called Lawrence, the brand, which sends sound waves to the bottom and back to measure the depth. And these are very easy devices, and people from community or anywhere around the world basically use those devices to track the fishes actually for their fishing activity. But it's also useful because anything that you have those soundings give us the depth of the region. And I also use the CTD sensor to account for how salinity and temperature affect sound, speed in water, and visualize everything in QGIS, a powerful open source mapping platform. But CTD here is mostly for the purposes for pressure, let's say, measurement, because sometimes what I can mention about Lawrence device is it's for shallower waters, and sometimes we hit the depth like 100 meters, and it's not really working well. And if you also have a bad weather condition, that's also a problem, because you need also a kind of stable boat condition, including the speed, so then device can record it even accurately. So CTD is there also kind of the backbone of our research to help me if needed to do any, let's say, background analysis to double check the accuracy of the data set. But when we talk about the data, it looks like, so many information, right? The process starts with the data collection, but what comes after is just as important. So here we see the many tiny point data set. I mean, I'm not going to talk about science today, right? I will just briefly mention what those points or the contours and everything means. These are resources for us. And we are seeing the Herschel Island here. So back then, what we saw here is basically a tiny part of the island right here, Herschel Spit it's called. And the entire zone, you see the Herschel Basin. Most of the time, this is where we can collect the data, but the rest is kind of the tricky part. And this is where we try to center our efforts to kind of improve the entire bathymetric data set or the mapping purposes of the Yukon coast. And again, I built a metadata, right? So this is a very detailed repository of the data we are collecting related to our region and of all available data from 60s, gray literature and etc. And also like both historical and the modern data. And then we try to prioritize the most reliable data set, because if you know a little bit about like mapping or any type of, cartography, you will understand what I mean when I say interpolation. So when you play too much with the data set, this might be tricky for the user or the reviewer, because most of the time we don't know the background of this, right? And this is the tricky part that now I try to deal with. Okay, what they use here, whether this was the actual data set, the raw data that we had the points. That's why I wanted to point the point data there, because that means there is the sounding there and we can know the actual depth of the region. And okay, we have this, but then how we can prioritize based on the, let's say, the actual soundings or survey records, we can say that, okay, we need those data sets. So we even filter one more time. And then we try to see like the most important part. So we try to have the same georeference. We try to have or make sure that we know the data type, because then in the next phase, we will need this, by meaning that, okay, which data set will come first in our, let's say, mapping purposes. Because as you can see here, there are many overlapping data sets that we use, but which one of them I want to care the most? I mean, not the other one is less important, but what was the weather condition that day, right? Or how accurate entire data set, and especially when we talk about the archive data from my institute, when I go to the field work, I also record the day and everything. But what if that researcher didn't do, and what if the data is not really accurate for our own purposes? So this is a bit the nitty-gritty part, but once all the data analysis and the decision tree and the mapping purposes, then we actually get the data set itself. But beforehand, there is also one critical part, which is really important in our case, the collaboration, right? And I'm not talking about the research to research collaboration. I'm talking about the person-to-person collaboration. And this can be not only the science-wise, because science is only one type of tool, right? But how about the traditional knowledge? How about the indigenous methodologies? So this part, I want to say that mapping doesn't happen in isolation. So this work depends on local expertise. People like Peter Archie, you see on the photo, is an indigenous ranger and boat driver with deep knowledge of the coast and its weather patterns. And we always follow what Peter said. Every morning I was going and checking Peter. Hi, Peter, how are you today? And what do you think about the weather? How shall we conduct our work today? And based on his feedback, actually, we did our work. And the work I'm talking about, like more than 40 hours per week, this is a lot, I mean, great amount of time to spend at sea. Imagine, I don't stand on a floor or land. I'm talking about I am standing on the boat. So this is really important because what we also do is not, we are not specifically measuring, right? In the cool picture of myself, you saw that I was doing the measurement with CTD. And for that, we stop on a specific point to collect the information. Maybe you can also see here, like there are little circles around. So those are the places I collected the CTD data. But other than that, the rest actually assured with the Lawrence device. Why I'm saying this? Because we spent 9 hours and sometimes even more per day, right? And that time, we also need to communicate not only about the research, my research, but also the life, because this is how the relationship builds on. And I think this is the what matters the most, because in our institute, if I need to talk about like the pre-preparation for the field work, we even learn about, okay, how to shoot the polar bear or how we can better know the region. But we don't really have the training about how to communicate with the local, someone from the community. And in this case, it's the indigenous people we are talking about and their knowledge. And I cannot simply underestimate or try to ignore what they know about the region, because obviously he knows the waters and everything there better than any of us. And this is just one example of what we are doing. But in general, what I see also in the science world, and especially if you are working on the Arctic, people most of the time go there, do their research and come back. But we often forget about one thing, which is the building relationship with the community. And I think that's what the matters are equally important that we do. So here we see that I prepared the device in advance and I did the check from our institute before we launch it there, but we couldn't launch it because there was a problem with the engine of our boat. And thanks to the Institute, Arctic Research Institute, we work closely. They had their boat, and another device was already deployed there, so we didn't miss anything that we're supposed to do during the research. And here we see a tiny shot taken by me from the helicopter drive above the Herschel Island, and you can see the salams, or let's say the erosion, right? And all the sediments actually meeting with the Arctic. And maybe that might be of interest to some of you who are into, I don't know, biogeochemistry or something about the region. And here, you know, we also have little breaks. And of course, Peter was always excited. Whenever he sees a chance, he always went for a little fishing, which was also nice experience to observe. But what I want to see is this project wouldn't be possible without a local expertise that was integrated in the project. And some example output. This is not necessarily from my work, but this is how it's gonna look like, right? And when we talk about the bathymetric map, like we see some options like that could help us reveal the underwater slopes, all channels and features that help understand the erosion, sediment transport, and potential flood risk. And each color or each contour is a data point, but also a bigger, a part of a bigger picture. And yeah, if I need to talk a little bit about, so what we have, what have we learned so far throughout the research? So many historical maps were based on sparse or outdated measurements, and modern mapping fills in those gaps, giving us high resolution views of vulnerable areas. And also, most importantly, we know we now see how much risk is hidden beneath the waterline and where urgent action is located. Because also when we talk about the data set, if I need to go back to this tiny picture, so sometimes we see that, I mean, obviously blue part represents the water, but the land part is the tricky part, because we see that this is the line where the water ends, but actually we still have more than 200 meters or even more ahead of us that we could go. And imagine, so this is not on the up-to-date maps of today. So imagine that you are navigating in these waters and you don't really have the actual idea of the region or actual picture of the region. So how can you better estimate your, I don't know, navigational purposes, safety, and so on? So it is really important and becomes handy when we have the up-to-date data set or the bathymetric maps of the region. And I will also, of course, after this study, we are talking about Yukon coast, but we also have a idea to help me continue our efforts for Northwest Territories. So this is like the adjacent region to Yukon coast. So if we, sorry, I don't have the picture of that, but if I try to, by the way, Herschel Island is somewhere here, the tiny dot, right? So it's a very small area there. But if we need to, where was it? If we need to go back to the area here, so we see this red area growing up. So hopefully we will increase our bathymetric efforts together with the Institute of Oceanography, Bedford Oceanography Institute from Canada. So we want to increase the community-based research efforts for the region, and especially this region we are talking about the people who use their boats to commute for something or just sustain their living purposes. So it will even become more handy and helpful for the people who are actually living in the area, because Yukon, Herschel Island is rather remote, but when we talk about the community and community living in the Arctic, this is even more important. That's why we're talking about building the frameworks for communities to use these tools for themselves, because I also created a basic, let's say, how to use the Lawrence map, because when we will be able to launch or deploy our device, then this will be kind of donated to the community where people can do their own citizen science to see and read the data set easily. And not just as research subject, but as also for the knowledge leaders, right? And now we are seeing actually one nicely done picture from Climate Justice Center. So here I wanted to point out, okay, we are doing the mapping, and this is about climate overall, but it's also perfectly suiting to our case, which is about mapping without listening can mislead, right? But mapping in collaboration reveals meaning. And this work becomes even more powerful when guided by Indigenous memory or seasonal knowledge or place-based understanding. And my goal is to help co-develop tools that are useful for both researchers and communities. So the tools that serve science and sovereignty. So I will leave you with these questions. So how do we protect the places we have never seen? Because we're also talking about the coastal erosion or sea level rise that can hit everywhere, right? We are seeing increasing records from the South Africa, South America, or different scenarios that might hit the small islands just in the middle of the ocean. So how do we center the knowledge that doesn't come from a machine, but from a memory and relationship. So the culture of the Arctic, the future of the Arctic isn't just written in melting ice, and it's shaped by what we choose to see, measure, and protect today. So this is my piece of final sentence to maybe give you a bit food for thought. So because the future of the Arctic isn't just written in melting ice, we just say that. So we have actually a chance to read those information and understand, and maybe use it not as a resource, but also help us to understand, okay, how can we learn from the results or the events that are already happening us, and please treat this not only Arctic wise, but everything happening around you. And then maybe we can start acting step by step, maybe small steps, but the steps that impact our future and future of all. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and for caring about the Arctic, a region that holds global meaning. And if you like to connect, here is where to find me. I also drop my email address just here, and I would love to hear your thoughts and questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deniz, for your talk. I hope we will have a few questions in a moment. To the audience, you can type those into the Q&A function of Zoom, please. Peter already typed one in. I actually put him in the panel now, and maybe you can ask your question in a moment, which is very high expert level. And since I'm a compared newbie, I would love to start the questioning round. Deniz, you had this wonderful slide number 5. You called this murky waters, or like the woman who did the map actually. And I really loved, maybe you can put it up once more.
Yeah, sorry, let me.
It was the map of the ocean, you know, where the landmass is all on the side. So this is a whole new world to me. And I really loved the map itself.
This one?
Number 5.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
And I was wondering, you said Japan did a really great job. I was wondering, do they use very simple methods like the single beam echo sounder maybe on their fisher boats, or is this all done by marine researchers?
Yeah, I don't think that they use simple, let's say, devices to record this. We are talking about the research vessels that are really powerful and expensive. That's why I rather relied on low-cost devices with the device that I was introducing. I mean, this is obviously not a brand marketing. This can be anything, but this was one of the, let's say, achievable ones in the market that everyone can contribute to the society. Because in Lawrence, there is also one community map called CMAP Genesis. And by using the data, by using the device and recording, because if you put a transect, or let's say a road, like you have points that you want to visit throughout your journey, and by just logging those information and following this with your boat, you are actually recording something. But also there is a simple button that you also need to say record this, so then someone can download that information in different types. But the collective meaning of that is to help someone, because I often also hear people doesn't want to share their own, let's say, water print behind, because maybe there is a very nice pool of fishes that people want to go and enjoy for their hobby. But this is where the science become handy, because we actually also use this information as well, like anything that people can use, right? That's why I mentioned there are different types of data set in my own collection, and there we try to understand in which purposes people use for what, because sometimes they do definitely something else, but there is the depth of the water which is useful for me, and I collect it and then I integrate it into our analysis.
Okay.
And I say about Japan because you see like how much of Japan is missing is just 2.3%. So if you see the blue part here, the big blue part, almost everything they record. I don't know how much of this is useful. There will be a lot of, let's say, post-processing, but still imagine like how much they routed around the island, the big island, Japan, to read what is beneath them. So that's why it's really, I would say, remarkable work, because the darkest part here we see the ocean itself, and the blue light blue part is something that's showing how much the work is done and how much we know about the ocean.
Yeah.
I wanted to place this because, I mean, there are so many photos. First, I was really afraid, okay, it's going to be a really long presentation, and I chopped a lot. And then I realized I was too fast. So it's really hard to, estimate. But I hope, audience today enjoy what they hear about.
Yeah, thanks. I you know, from Japan, because they also are not only probably remarkable marine researchers, but they're also remarkable fishers. I thought that maybe, you know, they launched a huge citizen science project or something like this to be able to map this.
Might be interesting to see. I mean, like I would say it wouldn't be that easy to record, because this is also kind of let's say a growing fashion that the project itself is becoming something to allow citizens to contribute into science, maybe within the last decade, but this information cannot be recorded within a decade window. So if they do citizen science, which I'm not aware of per se, this is still great, but I mean, this requires also a huge institutional, let's say, contribution, because it's also about funding, right? And how much you fund your own community. I know Canada is also doing a bit of it, but if you go check the ocean and what is there, it's like a street map, right? It's very light, blue, like kind of having those polygonal shapes or different grids, which is to me like kind of street map, like from the bird eye view, but still improving. And here we see Europe did also a huge job, I would say, and also we see some work here on the Atlantic part from US. But yeah.
Right, thanks.
So Peter, shoot first, then.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Deniz. Sorry for not being able to join the meeting as a moderator, because I had some trouble with the ID. So my question was, why didn't you use a more sophisticated Lorentz system, like you use the Hook 9, and there would be some more modern machines like the EDS9 or some of these sophisticated machines. They have side scan, they have down scan, and you could get more information about the seafloor. I think this is also important for you if you use the CTD.
It's really affordable.
Yeah, would this be an option for you?
Yeah, I mean, the device actually we had has a better, let's say, option. I think it was 11 or 12. I don't remember right now, because we left the device in the research in Canada research center. Maybe you didn't hear about what I explained before. We have a better device, and we don't talk about like the big differences in terms of the budget. We are talking about 1,000 or 2,000, so which is really nothing if you're talking about the research, because normally I see devices like it's really expensive, but this is really something affordable. But the problem was we had a problem last year with our boat engine, and we ordered two new engines for our research boat, but it didn't arrive on time. Although we brought the device, there was no boat to launch for our equipment. Therefore, we relied on Ranger's boat, which was provided by the institute that we were collaborating. So thanks to them, we had. Otherwise, this year it would also be hectic for me, because last year, because of the engine, I couldn't do my own sampling, let's say, measurement.
Okay.
But definitely, I mean, it's useful. And as you said, there are also some options in this one, and which is still useful for me. But yeah, the more the merrier. Definitely depending on the weather, right? And the circumstances around you. So even you have the best of everything, sometimes you ended up having a polar bear next to your cabin, and you're stuck in your cabin begging for, please go ahead and find something else, which actually happened the day before we left the island. It was the other side of the bay, and it was really tricky because, yeah, if they are there and if they are curious, they will never let it go. But thanks God, the polar bear found something else to chase with, and the following day the weather was perfect, allowing us to leave on time. So it was just on time. Otherwise, yeah, this year we were lucky, but last year we weren't. That's why I only have the data set that I recorded from this year. But thanks to our institute, we also have recordings from previous years. But it's always good to have your own data set, because you know how you record it and how you deal with it.
Exactly. What are the depths you are working, minimum and maximum?
Minimum, I think it could hit to 1 meter, that it could go up to 100 right now.
100, okay.
The waters that we are around the island.
Yeah. Okay, but 100 meters is too deep for a side scan for these non-professional instruments. So they finish at 60 meters or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
I could even force like up to 80 meters, but for the rest, it was really tricky, and it will not be kind of in our radar, because we want to kind of define the borders about like the depth zones, right? The changes, and from there, especially around the island, like the places where we see the most like erosion activities. So here we can also have a bit of idea, okay, how the sediment transport goes and influence also the seafloor and the depth of the region, and overall, let's say, the ocean activity, because we are also talking about the acidification and other factors. But this is not mainly, let's say, the motivation of my research, but hopefully the mapping of like having the up-to-date map of the region will help us to better see those factors impacting overall island and its surroundings.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah. So I had a whole list of things, but most of it you answered already. The one thing I really liked is that you said we have citizens science, which is usually used to involve citizens in science by educating them. But I think you have the reverse one as well, because you actually need the information which is in the populations there to enhance your data. So that's interesting. So you have you're doing this reverse idea of citizen science, where you actually need the citizens to do your science.
Yeah.
Which is not a general idea, and it will be. And I think we don't have much time, because I think that information is getting lost.
Yeah, and also we are talking about some like islands that are at stake, right? If we go to Alaska, for instance, there is one island called like Shishmaref community, and there are already countdowns for the region. No matter what they do, it's happening. So what will be the feature of relocation for the communities who actually, I don't know, live there for centuries or over centuries? If they will be relocated to somewhere, subsistence is something, because they are related to the sea, and there is a big connection we are talking about. Maybe, you know, you like the lake next to your flat or home, is something for you. But we are also talking about the people who are earning from the sea and who are respecting to the sea and who are living with the sea. So imagine that sea is now becoming a threat to you because of the human activities. And if you will be relocated to somewhere else, this also needs to be alongside the coast again, where you cannot secure your future, that there will be no problem. And there, how can you manage the infrastructure and everything? Because obviously people have budget for something, but not for everything. So very big topic. And I mean, my contribution is maybe a drop in the ocean, but it is still something that, you know, as long as we know, as long as we appreciate, and don't come with saying that I know the region and what affects, and we will come up with the adaptation and mitigation strategies. Those are the really, you know, the words that we have to be careful, because imagine that someone is coming to your neighborhood and say that, yeah, I will have a plan for this region and the people living here. And I would come and say that, excuse me, who are you? But often we are drawing this image like scientists to go somewhere and say that, wow, I know everything. Well, we don't. So how we will change this, because we are talking about a decade or centuries of information flowing from one to another, but often missing this very important asset of the region, to respect the traditional knowledge and the overall culture, right? So yeah, I think there's also one comment. I also saw one comment.
Yes, is it bathymetric science underfunded, was the question.
Yeah. So I am affiliated with Alfred Wegener Institute, and they actually purchased a device for me. So if this is somewhat the answer to your question, because I am both part of the University of Potsdam, but I'm working from Alfred Wegener Institute because this is where my supervisor is located and where we conduct our research. So I always commit to Alfred Wegener Institute there. And when we need to do something like the fieldwork campaign or anything related to my manuscript, right, then Alfred Wegener Institute will be the body to financially support me.
And Nuno asked another question. Can you read it yourself?
Sure.
Another question. Yes.
Yeah, while we are at it, how reliable is climate data models when lots of bathymetric data is outdated or just non-existent? Will this be updated data significantly influence climate models? Oh, again, this is the Yukon coast where we are talking about 300 kilometer square. So this is only one tiny part. And I think this is the what I like most about science, because you do your own thing, but in a broader picture, you are contributing something collectively. So what I'm going to improve will definitely be in favor of Canadians for sure, because I'm working on the Canadian Beaufort Sea, but then hopefully will extend it towards the region. But what I'm doing is not something I don't think that they are not aware of. It will just be more focused, because, you know, you cannot really define a job description to focus only on this. People have various duties, and I don't think that this would be something else that they will be specifically looking on the region. But what I would create would be in benefit of my institute fellows, because my supervisor is in the region now for 20 years, and also for the Canadian bodies, I would say, that are dealing with their waters. But when we also talk about the Arctic, right, imagine like this is just one piece of
Frozen.
All right, Denise is probably going to be back in a second. Yeah, would like to say hello to Burak Ali Cicek, who has just joined the Q&A. Your question was just answered, right? Because he was asking how long Deniz institution has been working in the region already. And I think she already just mentioned that her boss is there for 20 years. I will quickly text Deniz and ask.
So we are waiting. What an excellent talk, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it looks like a really holistic approach, which we sometimes really miss. And you know, when we and the colleagues in the Synopsis program, when we talk about you know, how we can be more sustainable citizens, I think the term holistic approaches is coming very, very often. And I think this is what we actually need for the change that we're all looking for here. And I think this the talk of Deniz showed this really well, how scientists can benefit from people living there for ages, and again then help them in how they can survive or also conservate their knowledge.
Yes, and I think it's also what we tend to forget is that we really have to listen to the people around us. That's what she does, because that's how they also start, or I think that's how they remain cooperating with the initiatives like this.
Yeah.
And that's
and you know, her very honest approach in telling us how her everyday life is, like we always do what Peter says.
Yeah.
That's not what we do, Peter, right?
No.
No, but it was really nice how she told us about how everyday life on the boat is. And
exactly.
She really gave a nice impression on how the research.
There she is.
Sorry.
You're back.
Back.
Good.
Yeah, I don't know. My laptop just gave an error, system failure. So I tried to join from the tablet. Hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
And
we improvised while you were away, and we need to say this again. We really liked your talk and how you told us about your everyday life on the boat while doing research in the region. Do you still know what your point was when you left?
Yeah, let me try to remember. Sorry, everything just got lost. Can I still see the question? Okay, we were talking about the region and Canadian bodies I was mentioning about. So the work will definitely be useful as long as it's open access. And I think that's what matters, because, you know, sometimes even I have a lot of problem, because when you try to coordinate or access to any information, I mean, of course, as part of the Canada, Canada has a great record of the data that they conducted, but some of them are kind of not hidden, but hard to access. And I'm really pushing hard to kind of get the information from them. And this also kind of led the efforts to have research visit from the Canadian, let's say, partners. So I'll be going there and basically saying them that give me this data set, because it's non-navigational purposes, right? I mean, it's for academic purposes and we want to improve something. But since we are not also talking about some type of engineering and it's more like scientific purposes, it will be somewhat limited for individual purposes. But I hope together with those efforts, I will make it more visible for everyone, because when we often talk about scientific information, it's more technical and people kind of find it really different, like different language to understand or digest. So hopefully it will be more understandable for everyone, and we don't miss anyone else who help us to make this happen.
Yeah, because talking about that, it popped in my mind something called deep sea mining, where companies will be exploring the seabed, and I don't know if I presume that is not available, and if it were available, it would be useful for you. But I think there are quite a few people on this planet doing exactly what you're doing, but for other purposes.
Yeah, what they are doing is like mining. It's something else. It's not like research purposes.
No.
And I don't think it would be useful, and I wouldn't like to use that either. I don't want to, you know, when we when we acknowledge what we use, we are also listing the people with like worldwide, and I wouldn't be proud of something that I wouldn't like to, because I don't know what the others think about it, but even my, let's say, journey into research started or led me during my volunteering times to introduce to the public about science and the climate change and its impact in the polar regions. And when we were doing this, of course, you need to rely on multiple information, and we are talking about interdisciplinary approach. And there I was like, okay, but I want to learn more about this, because, for instance, we don't have permafrost in Turkey, right? So it's something else. But then it kind of led me to understand or discover more, like, what is happening there? I want to know about it. And the more you get into, like, I don't know if you are kind of a research geek, like would like to hear or learn every day. So then you would kind of understand, like, when you open one page that leads to another page. I mean, sometimes tiring, like, okay, where is the end of this? But sometimes it's really exciting that, okay, I know something that can lead into this, and from there it's like a recipe. If you know the ingredients, then you know what the entire soup is made of. But if you don't know, so then you will wonder, okay, but how shall I do this? I don't know the taste of this, and so on. So it kind of led me there. But apart from that, we are also talking about the research impact and the carbon footprint, right? Often this is questioned. Okay, we are talking about climate scientists, but how about their carbon footprint? That's true. But imagine, like, one person goes there for the entire year, do the maintenance and come back. And this gives us a big chunk of information. So kind of the good of the bad thingy. And maybe once a year, I mean, I'm happy that my fieldwork campaigns are done, so I don't have to be there in person. That's a good part of it, that I can kind of advocate for it. But apart from that, when we talk about the science or responsible science, we also have other duties, right? I mean, I'm not only talking about like being vegan, being more eco-friendly, but understanding like why we would go with this and how this would change our life in a different way. So when I try to learn about something, because I'm also providing different type of presentations about our ecological footprint, and of course, bathymetry is one side, but my research entirely is something else. Or we are also talking about the ocean, like overall the conveyor belt and everything related to the Arctic and overall oceans, and understanding the impact of climate. So when we talk about this, of course, you have a bit of understanding about environment and all entire like ecosystem linked with each other. And from there, how to better understand ecologically, like eco-friendly living purposes. And from there, actually, I want to point out a little bit towards if we know about like something to make our everyday life making a bit better, so then maybe we can try to learn more about, okay, but how can I make my life even better? I mean, maybe for some people, we can talk about not every day you need to drive your car, but maybe you can use your public transport, or even you drop everything and you do riding to your work or somewhere that you can really afford. And this is also something helping us to live in a more healthier way. So I'm more in favor of understanding the overall environment in favor of our benefits, and also thinking the environment in a, you know, the way back. So how we can think better to environment by doing that, how we can be more responsible, the way we are consuming and the way that we are using the resources.
Great. Yeah.
There's one remark talking of resources, but it's about teacher resources. I just put it in the chat for all teachers attending. I identify a great resource for your lessons. It's going to be on the Synopsys portal very soon. It's from the department, it's from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. No one knows how much longer those servers will be running, but we are going to upload this very soon to the Synopsys portal. It's called Web Maps, and it's a great resource for science and technology lessons from 6th to 8th grade, how bathymetry maps can help exploring the ocean floor, and it's a complete guide for, I think, 7 or 8 lessons. Really great resource.
Great.
All right. Sorry, Harm.
No, I think this concludes this webinar, I think. Have you asked all the questions we want to ask? Did you ask all the questions you want to ask, Peter? Because you're the expert here. Below sea level, so
yeah, only a few words to climate and marine research. The big problem is that most of the research vessels run with old engines, and they use crude oil, and they have a lot of emissions. Also, our German Polar Star is from 1986 and uses old engines, so the whole fleet is not really climate friendly. And from the general viewpoint, the propulsion in water needs a lot of fuel, and therefore it's not comparable with cars. So 1 mile might be 1 liter or more for a small boat as well, and the big boats more, of course. So that's why we all have a little problem with climate when we talk about climate impact. And yeah, okay, especially in the Arctic and the Antarctic, the emissions are really a problem.
Okay, thank you. Well, Simon, I think the last word is for you.
All right, then
Yes.
Thanks for staying until the end, for all the ones that stayed until now. Thanks, Deniz, for your time and your effort. It was really a nice talk. I loved listening to you. It's going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel tomorrow for everybody to see. It's also going to be uploaded together with the resource that I just shared in the chat on the Synopsys portal. And now I wish you and your beloved ones a really nice evening. And the 4 of us, we meet in the backstage once more. And goodbye. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.